a circus every day, isn't it? Okay. Back to work. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Building Investors YouTube channel. We're going to be finishing up this project here, right there. So remember the one that we demoed and then we reframed it? Now we're back to doing the finishing work, and all we got to do on this side, obviously we got the drywall put on in the last part. We're going to be doing the mudding and taping around the perimeter, and then we're going to be doing the texturing and painting, and then we're going to be coming back and doing the finished trim work. We're going to be framing out this door with some finished trim, and then we're going to be putting barn doors on the other side, this side over here. So this side's pretty much going to be exactly how it was before, except for having nice big white barn doors, one sliding that way and one sliding this way. So no further ado, let's get into mixing some mud and getting this done. So if you are new to the Building Investors YouTube channel, you will not know what I do for a living, and it might help to know what I do. So I am a remodel contractor. I do lots of small jobs, mostly kitchen and bathroom remodels, but I do things like this, where the nursery needed to be expanded, and so we made this extra space in here in the next room to make a toddler nursery. That one's going to be the infant nursery. So in between here, there's going to be barn doors going this direction on the other side of the wall. And there'll be a baby gate here in the middle, which we'll kind of make up later. But the goal today is to finish off this area, do the texturing and painting, finish trim, barn doors, all that stuff. So that's what this video is for. But the first thing we need to do is mix the mud. Now I'm using a all-purpose mud right here. So this is already a pre-mixed mud, but it comes very thick. And so you need to thin it down if you're going to use it for, if it's going to be very easy to use anyway. So add some water. That's all you need to do. You don't need to be very specific. Just add a little bit and then mix it. And if it's still too thick, add some more water, mix it again. So you can use other muds, but this is the one that's easiest for me and has the best turnout. So put your drill, open it up, put your little mixer paddle bit in there, and then mix it up. And then once you're done mixing, you can use the same bucket of water to hold your mixer bit in so it doesn't dry out on you, and you can wash it later at your convenience, or you can use it again to mix more mud. But I'm only mixing like this much of the bucket because if I want it to be thicker, I can mix more mud in, which leaves me opportunities to do that. Whereas if I mix the whole bucket, then it could be all too thin, and then I'd be up a creek without a paddle. So the other tools I'm going to be using are a trowel pan and a trowel. So this is just a 6-inch trowel. I've got a bigger one for floating bigger on the second coat, but we won't use that quite yet. So we're going to use this one now. Basically all you're going to do is scoop up a bunch in here, wipe it off in the pan, and then start applying the wall. So easy peasy lemon squeezy. Once you get your trowel pan full of mud, you're just going to take it over here and do a skim coat along this area, making sure to fill the gap in between. Some people like to come with a razor knife and score off any jagged edges, and you can also come along the whole thing and create like a bevel. But I think this will be just fine for what we're doing. So we're going to take our knife, grab some mud, wipe off the corners so it doesn't drip on the floor, and then just spread it up the wall. Again, dip it, clean off your corners, slide it up the wall, and just keep doing that all the way around, like I said, making sure to fill up that area. Pretty simple stuff. You can also drag it down if you want. Pretty simple. And then once you get the mud all on there and kind of even it out a little bit, take your tape. This is just a regular paper tape. Nothing fancy. All you got to do is pull it out to the length you want, tear it off, or take your knife, tear a nice edge on it. So all I'm going to do is put it up here where I want it, drag it to the floor, and then tear it off. Very simple. And all you're going to do is make sure you tape it right over top of that crack. Just push it in temporarily with your fingers. Then come back with your knife or your trowel and push that tape right in that mud. don't have to be super fancy and super neat with that coat. You just want it to be flat. And if you drip some on your arm, you just clean it off with your trowel. This stuff washes off nicely off the floor, so if you drip some on the floor, it's not like a panic. It's just, you can wipe it up whenever, or you can scrape it off when it's dry. The when it's on carpet, it's a little harder to clean up, but it's not gonna stain anything. It's just lime dust basically in water. So now that I've got that taped, I'm gonna tape it all the way around, but I'm also gonna come and do a second coat right over top of it right now. That way I have something to fill on top of right now. It's not super important. You can wait and let that dry, or you can go ahead and put a second coat on. I'm gonna put a second coat on real quick and do it all the way around, and I'll catch you on the next step. Your main goal on this coat is to make sure you don't have any ridges on the side or anything in the middle that's too big to sand off, because you want to do as little sanding as possible, not only for dust's sake, but for your arm's sake, or for whatever you're using. You just want it to be as best as possible. So when you're skimming this coat, just make sure you put a lot of pressure on the corner of your trowel, and as you slide down, it'll make this basically no edge or ridge. Same on this side, push against this side and pull down, float in the middle smooth, and then make sure the middle just isn't too messy, because you'll be doing another coat or two. So it's not super important. Just make sure you don't have any ridges that you're gonna have to sand off later is the important thing. So anyways, let's do the rest of this. Okay, well, now you're on to voiceover, Ezra, because there's people in the building, and this was very difficult to continue on talking to my camera while people were talking to me. So anyways, to set the camera up, so even if people walk in and start talking to me, I can explain what's going on. So we're doing the first coat, again, all the way around the sides here. Pardon, I have a cold since I'm recording this, so I sound a little different than I did in the first part of the video. And now we're moving on to the second part, which is just doing a second coat. So just building up. That way there's no transition. That way you won't see like where the hole used to be. So now that that second coat is drying, we're going to move on to the trim work, which I'm measuring for here. So this is a 1x12, just regular pine, cheap lumber, basically knotty pine. And we're going to be using it as our trim boards. Then we'll come back and sand it and paint it. So what I'm doing now is just cutting a straight line, a straight edge on one side. That way I can measure from it to the other side. And that way I have a nice straight cut on both sides. So measure over, mark your board, and then you can flip it over and then cut it again. And that'll give you your length for the top board here, which I want to be from side to side full length. So anyways, just take your speed square, mark a straight line. That way you know you're following a straight edge. Both sides there says the board's bigger than my speed square. And then use your speed square as a guide to make a nice straight cut. And then you can cut off the edge of your board here. Super simple. So I've got a 40-tooth finish blade on my saw, which is nice. Catch it with your foot so it doesn't bang on the floor. It's a nice little trick you can do too. Just put your foot in the middle of the board that's going to fall, and it won't crash down either side. Helps that I have steel toes. But anywho, if I were doing finish trim a bunch of finish trim in this room, I'd be using a miter saw instead of a circular saw. So keep that in mind. It would be nicer to use that, but it wasn't a big deal to cut a few cuts with this. Also, ripping this to width, I don't necessarily need a table saw or a track saw. I don't have a track saw, but I would love one day. Milwaukee sponsor, welcome, of course. Anyways, I have a table saw underneath the table that you don't see, and I'll be using it in a bit, but the battery for it is charging currently. So I've decided to continue on with my skill saw, so making a nice straight line and then cutting it. Now you could clamp down your level and use it as a straight edge, so you get a nice perfectly straight cut, but it's longer than my level, so it's just a lot of pain to not worry about it. So just cut as straight as you can, which for me is pretty straight. Then you can always come back and fix it if you need to. You can see I take the sander out, make sure any of the blade marks are gone. Just kind of sanding the board nice and smooth. That way when you paint it, you don't see the blade marks or anything. It just looks nice and clean, like it was a primed board from the beginning. So sanding both sides, and then we're going to sand the top and the bottom as well. That just makes it look nice and clean. And so yep, do the whole board. And this is just probably 120 sandpaper, and super simple. So pass that a few times, and then take it over to your opening. And I've got an 18 gauge finish nailer here, which I'm going to use to nail this board up. So pull it out of my pocket here, and then put a few nails on this side, and then go to the other side and make sure it's lined up before nailing it. So we don't want it to stick out either side very much, if at all. We want it to be even flush with the drywall. That way the trim fits nice and tight as well. And then put a couple nails in the middle. And now that, since I know my framing is nice and tight and level and straight because I'm the one who installed it, I don't have to worry about shimming it or anything. But if you were doing it on a remodel where the framing wasn't done by you, then you would probably want to check that. But since I know it's straight, I can just nail it straight directly to it. So anyways, cutting the sides here, and that one ended up being a little crooked, and my battery was nice and topped off for the table saw. So just went ahead and put the table saw to the width I needed, and cut the rest of the boards to that width. So again, just cut the board length, cut the width, make sure it's nice and clean, nail it up, boom. That whole door opening is trimmed now. So moving on here, you can see I'm using my measuring tape to mark a 1/4 inch reveal. This tells me where my trim's gonna lay. That way it has a nice, it's called reveal because it's backed up from the trim just a little bit to give it kind of a picture frame look. So as you can see, I've already framed the side, or put the sides up there. Just took 2 1x3s and then nailed it on right and left, and then 1/4 inch reveal on both sides, and then 1/4 inch sticking up above the door. That way, this board that I'm cutting, which is 1x6 primed pine, it will fit directly on top of that and have the perfect reveal on all sides. So cut to length. Now I need to match this trim to the trim that's already in the nursery, which is right next door. It has like a 1/4 inch over round. Well, it's actually an 1/8 inch round over on the trim, and the trim I wasn't able to find at the time, so we're making it out of this board, which is so far superior than the board that's in the nursery. But anyways, it'll look exactly the same. It'll just be better quality stuff. So taking my router here and just rounding it over nice and smooth. And then once I get it all routed off, it's nice to be able to sand it before it goes up there. Of course, this board's pretty much perfect. It doesn't need a lot of work, but the edges, the ends of the board where I cut are a little jagged, and they won't look as good when you paint it if they're not smooth. So just take your sander, sand the edges, because it's a little harder to sand when it's up on the wall. Just sand it there, and then make sure, I just usually come across once I sand both ends, and then sand the top to make sure there's no, just jagged edges or anything. Just make sure it's nice and clean, and because it'll come in handy later on in the video, as you'll see. Anyways, sand it nice and smooth. And now I'm marking an inch back from both sides because the reveal on the top of this board is going to be an inch hangover on both sides of that trim. So when I put it up there, I can see where that pencil mark is, and I know if I need to slide it right or left. So 1 inch there, and then I'm going to double check the other side just to make sure that it looks the same. And if it is, I'm going to nail it. So let's see what, surprise. Oh, it's the same. Okay, good. So we're going to nail it. So nail that side. Think about nailing the middle here, and I was like, I should probably nail that side first. So nail this side. Just trying to hit the studs behind the framing, actual framing behind it to hold it nice and tight. And then run right in the middle, nailing it to the trim, and then one to the stud above it. So this locks the trim to the wall and the wall to the trim. So that's the importance there. So anyways, got that all framed out. So as you can see, I've already done the rest of the room. That was just, I don't need to show you all of it. So I just want to show you the main part that we're working on. What you see me doing here is adding a shim. This will push the trim out because the trim board on the right side there, where my right hand is not quite flush with the trim above it. So I want it to be nice and clean. Now this will be caulked later, so all the gaps that we see will be caulked, but I want that to be nice and flush with the trim above it. So anyways, doesn't that look so nice and clean? We still have to texture the wall, which will be, I'll talk about later. But yeah, it looks nice, looks really nice. So trim will be painted white, the walls will be painted gray. And yeah, there's a tiny little gap here. That's totally acceptable. We'll be filling that with caulking, and it'll disappear. And then once we paint it, it'll look beautiful. So this is the side with the shim at the top. So you had to push it out to make it even with the trim on top. So that looks nice and smooth. That's important. So we want that to look good. So anyways, that's what that looks like from behind. So since I'm not talking, well, I will be talking to someone shortly, as you'll see. But this is wood putty. This is going to fill all those holes where the nails went. So basically just get a little on your trowel there and push it in the hole, and then wipe away as much as possible. And then you're going to come back and sand it. But for now, filling all the holes and imperfections that we can find in the boards with that, and then coming back with our little sponge sander, which will be right here. And all you got to do is sand it flush, sand it flat. You could use a sander they used to sand the ends of that trim board earlier, but this is really easy. So as I chat to that person that just walked in the nursery, you can see me sanding. And I'm going to sand the whole board, not just where the nails are. That way it's just smooth. So you'll see me going back and forth on the whole board here shortly. that is just to make sure all the nail holes are covered and hidden, all the blemishes are hidden, so when we paint it, it will look nice and smooth. So, anywho, sand a little more, as I said, just sand the whole thing. It takes just a few minutes to walk around the room and sand it, but it looks good, good. So next up, after the sanding, we're going to be doing more sanding, which is this, we're just gonna be sanding the drywall dust, or making drywall dust is what I should say. So this is a pole sander, the orbital sander. I hook it up to my vacuum cleaner here, turn my vacuum on, and then I can sand this, which is third coat of mud at this point. So last coat. So I can sand it, make it nice and smooth, and that way when we texture it, it will look nice and clean and like it never happened, like there's never a hole in the wall. So you'll see before and afters later on, which will be really nice. But anyways, sanding this, the dust goes into the vacuum. You have to clean out the filter every once in a while. And then after you get done with that, you can move on to the caulking. So I should mention the texture on the wall I did not show because I've made a whole bunch of videos about that. So if you need to learn how to do orange peel texture, go watch my orange peel texture video if you could, please. And you'll see how I did it. Next up is caulking, like I was just saying. And basically you're gonna cut a 45 on the top of your caulking tube and then squeeze it out as little as possible, but as much as you need. And then use your whatever finger fits the best. I like using my index finger, and then smooth out that caulking to where it has a nice radius and it cleans up any gaps or imperfections on top of the board. So it's just that easy. Cut the tube open, poke a hole in the top of the seal, put your finger on it, smooth it out, and use a damp cloth to clean off your finger and the caulking gun and any other messes that you might make while doing the caulking. So pretty easy stuff. So that'll just make things look clean, tidy, brand new. So went all around the room. Once you're done with that, you come back and put some painter's tape on the ground. And I found my easiest way to finish the painting on this is to just use a 4-inch roller. This is like a 4-inch roller with a fine napped head on it. It's like a 1/4-inch nap, which is just the thickness of your paint roller itself. Just dip it in your paint, and you can push it right up against the floor because you got that tape. And then since we're painting the walls next, you don't have to worry about getting it on the walls. It's a lot easier to paint the trim first and the walls later, just because of the space that you have to work with. So I would recommend doing the trim first. So once you get all the trim painted, the finished product is going to look like this. There's a little sneak peek on the next video because we're going to be doing barn doors on the next video. I wanted to show you what it looks like, all trimmed out, all painted. We're going to be showing the rest of the painting of the walls in the next video. And I hope you enjoyed very much watching this. I can't wait to share with you the actual reveal of the project. It looks nice. It's all finished. So anyways, here's one more teaser photo. But thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a good one. God bless.